Sophie loved her grandmother's attic. It was a place of wonder, filled with the scent of old books and forgotten treasures. Sunbeams slanted through dusty windows, illuminating cobwebs and faded photographs. One afternoon, Sophie stumbled upon a wooden chest, tucked away in a shadowy corner. Inside, nestled in yellowed silk, lay a porcelain doll. The doll was breathtaking. Her name was Lila, and she had rosy cheeks, bright blue eyes that seemed to follow Sophie, and a cascade of golden curls. Lila wore a velvet dress the color of a summer sky, and around her neck was a tiny silver locket. Sophie was captivated. She carefully lifted Lila from the chest, feeling an instant connection to the delicate figure. That night, Sophie couldn't resist taking Lila to bed with her. She placed the doll on her bedside table, her gaze lingering on Lila's serene face. As Sophie drifted off to sleep, she thought she heard a faint whisper, like the rustle of silk. "Thank you." The whispers continued each night. They were soft, almost inaudible, but they seemed to spiral from Lila's unmoving lips. Sometimes Sophie could have sworn the doll's expression changed, a flicker of sadness in the painted eyes. One morning, Sophie awoke to find Lila turned towards her, her porcelain hand reaching out. Sophie tried to dismiss these strange occurrences as figments of her imagination. Yet, she couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Lila was more than just a doll. There was a presence about her, an unsettling aura that sent shivers down Sophie's spine. Sophie decided to confide in her grandmother. She recounted the whispers, the feeling of being watched, and the unsettling way Lila seemed to move on her own. Her grandmother listened intently, her brow furrowed with concern. When Sophie finished, her grandmother sighed. "There's something you need to know about Lila, Sophie," she said, her voice heavy. Her grandmother led Sophie back to the attic, to a dusty old bookcase tucked behind a faded tapestry. She pulled out a leather-bound journal, its pages brittle with age. "This belonged to Edgar Alcott," her grandmother explained, her voice low. "He was a gifted doll maker, but his creations were said to be cursed." Sophie carefully opened the journal. The spidery handwriting spoke of Alcott's obsession with breathing life into his dolls. He wrote of ancient rituals, of harnessing the energy of the living to animate his creations. But his words were also laced with regret, with the chilling realization that he had trapped innocent souls within his dolls. Sophie's heart pounded as she read about Lila. Alcott had poured all his love and longing for his lost daughter into her creation. He had performed a forbidden ritual, binding her spirit to the doll. But instead of bringing his daughter back, he had trapped her soul in a porcelain prison. Understanding washed over Sophie. Lila wasn't malevolent. She was heartbroken, trapped in a porcelain shell, unable to escape. Sophie felt a surge of sympathy for the doll and the lost soul residing within. She vowed to help Lila find peace. Sophie spent hours talking to Lila, sharing her thoughts and dreams. She told her about the world outside, about the warmth of the sun and the joy of laughter. As she spoke, she imagined Lila's spirit listening, experiencing the world vicariously through her words. One evening, Sophie noticed a change in Lila. The sadness in her painted eyes seemed to lessen, replaced by a glimmer of hope. When Sophie whispered goodnight, she heard a clear voice, soft as a sigh. "Thank you, Sophie." From that moment on, Sophie and Lila were inseparable. They shared secrets whispered under the covers, stories read by the firelight, and dreams of freedom. Sophie learned about Lila's life before she became a doll, her love for painting, her laughter that sounded like wind chimes, and her longing for the sea. Their bond deepened, a strange friendship between a girl and a doll. Sophie was determined to free Lila from her porcelain prison. She knew she couldn't do it alone. She needed her grandmother's help. Together they would break Alcott's curse. Sophie and her grandmother returned to the attic, their footsteps echoing in the stillness. They pulled out the old wooden chest where Lila had been hidden. Inside, beneath the yellowed silk, lay a small, velvet-lined compartment. Sophie's grandmother carefully lifted a silver key from a chain around her neck. The key unlocked the hidden compartment, revealing a collection of aged objects: a dried rose, a lock of golden hair tied with a blue ribbon, and a handwritten note. Sophie's grandmother gently unfolded the note. It was a letter from Alcott to his daughter, filled with remorse and a desperate plea for forgiveness. Sophie's grandmother explained that the objects held the remnants of Alcott's love for his daughter and the key to breaking the curse. They needed to perform the ritual Alcott had used, but this time they would reverse it, releasing Lila's spirit with love instead of binding it with grief. Following Alcott's instructions, Sophie and her grandmother gathered in the attic as the sun began to set. They arranged the objects from the chest, the rose, the lock of hair, and the letter on a small table draped in white linen. The air grew heavy with anticipation. Sophie held Lila close, her heart pounding. She whispered words of comfort to the doll, promising her freedom and peace. Taking a deep breath, Sophie began to read the ritual from Alcott's journal. The words were ancient, their meaning obscure, yet they resonated with power. As the last rays of sunlight faded, Sophie's grandmother lit a circle of candles around the table, their flames flickering in the growing darkness. The attic seemed to hum with energy, the air thick with the weight of the impending ritual. Sophie continued to chant the words from the journal, her voice gaining strength. She could feel the energy building, swirling around them, connecting her to Lila, to Alcott's grief, and to his daughter's trapped spirit. Tears streamed down Sophie's face, a mixture of sadness and hope. Suddenly, the attic was filled with a blinding light. Sophie gasped and closed her eyes against the brilliance. When she opened them, she saw Lila bathed in a radiant glow. The porcelain doll seemed to shimmer, her painted features softening, becoming more lifelike. Then, as quickly as it had begun, the light faded. The candles sputtered and went out, plunging the attic into darkness. Sophie stared at Lila, her heart in her throat. The doll's eyes, once painted blue, now sparkled with a life of their own. Lila moved. She stretched out her porcelain arms, her fingers flexing, no longer stiff and unyielding. She smiled at Sophie, a genuine smile that reached her newly awakened eyes. "Thank you," Lila whispered, her voice like the tinkling of wind chimes. And then, in a swirl of light, Lila was gone. The porcelain doll lay on the table, once again still and lifeless. But Sophie knew that Lila was finally free. Her spirit, released from its porcelain prison, was at peace. Sophie and her grandmother sat in the darkness, the silence broken only by their soft sobs. They had broken the curse, releasing Lila and the souls of the other children trapped within Alcott's dolls. The attic, once a place of unease, now felt lighter, the air cleansed. As the first rays of dawn pierced through the attic window, Sophie made a promise. She would keep the memory of Lila and the other children alive. She would tell their stories, ensuring that their spirits, though freed, would never be forgotten. Sophie carefully wrapped Lila's porcelain form in the yellowed silk and placed her back in the wooden chest. She would keep the doll always, a reminder of the bond they had shared and the curse they had broken together. The attic, once a place of fear, was now a sanctuary, a place where Sophie could honor the past and cherish the memory of the doll who had taught her the true meaning of friendship and the enduring power of love.